we can walk about in our gardens and years virtually.
Talking about late winter pruning, and now we're into the how-to reminders, things we've told you before, but we think you want to see again. This is gardenatoz.org. I'm Janet.
I'm Stephen.
And Sonia is moderating the chat. Okay, what you want to do is you want to remove dead or diseased wood, make it your first point of attack. You're going to take all of the damaged wood out, all of the dead wood out. If it looks like it's infected, got a canker, as in a sunken area on the trunk, you want to cut 6 inches below it, and you want to cut to a good node.
Yep.
So here, damaged wood, stupid deer. It's on a witch hazel, and you can see that it's happened more than once. See the damage further down? Okay, take the whole trunk out. And you might think about putting up some deer guards.
Yep.
But it's not going to be vigorous. If you see dead stuff in your evergreen here, don't just keep shearing it. Reach in to that branch that's dead, trace it back to a lively branch and cut it back. The side branches of other branches in the area can fill in.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, it's amazing how well they can fill in when you give them some light this time of year, but they're not going to fill in if they're shaded by all of this built up twiggy stuff that's in there. So one side of this topiary looks pretty good. The other side is a lot thinner, a lot more dead wood taken out of that side.
Yep.
You can see where dead wood was taken out a while back in 2 places on this one. It fills in, or you can fill it in. Okay,
You lose one. Why is it always in the middle, right?
Always lose one.
Or you could make a new one.
Make a new hedge. You don't prune it until it gets to be the size that the height and the width you want it to be. Okay, don't leave stubs, especially when you're taking out dead stuff.
Be careful with the branch crop.
Don't leave stubs.
Don't leave that.
That's nothing but an attraction for pests and infections of all kinds. And you want to preserve the branch bark collar. That thickened spot around there, you need to keep. That is live wood that belongs to the trunk, and it can grow over and seal over that cut. Even something that this is a little paper bark maple. You can see it's one-sided from the shade on the other side. They've taken a branch off and headed it back at longwood. And they've taken it and they've left the collar. It looks like it's sticking out farther. It's not. It's going to grow right over it like that,
And
like a belly button.
That's how it's supposed to heal.
And that's what the plants do best themselves. No paint.
But you got to leave that collar.
Yeah. If you don't leave the collar, this will happen. They cut into the collar. You can see the roll of tissue. The ridge is called wound wood. It was trying to grow, but it was dying back where it had been cut into the branch. This is an old panicle hydrangea.
Yeah.
Cut the wrong way. So and this is easiest to do when plants are young. This is a Harry Lauder's walking stick or a contorted filbert, depending on which way you want to call it. And it had just been pruned. The guy said, "Oh, we just pruned that one over there." And you can see they pruned and left the collar there and there, but they did leave a stub there, for which I will not blame them. See the stub? Those are murder to get out. Japanese maples do that too.
To try and get that out of there.
I've used a keyhole saw.
And
I think there needs to be a Dremel tool.
This is, again, in a personal garden, your garden, you've got one plant, you have the time to take the time to do this. In a major pruning area like Dawes, you might not have the time to spend 20 minutes to get that out.
Yeah.
To be realistic.
Yeah. Same thing with things like the yellow twig dogwood. We found yellow twig dogwood that should have had some of the diseased wood taken out, because this is a common thing. It is, the plant, what its problems are, and so you take that stuff out. Don't leave stubs and don't leave dead stuff around. It just becomes, see the black that you're looking at there.
There are diseased plants that should be taken out. Now they're spreading into the other ones.
Yeah. So that stub of old wood should have been taken out, but should is a matter of like Steve says, do you have 6 miles of hedge to do? I get tired doing 10 boxwoods. Yeah. Okay. When you're taking out dead stuff, keep your tools clean. and don't work on wet wood. Don't have to paint the wounds. And if you've taken something out that you're not sure of, or you think it's infested, burn it, chip it, bury it 18 inches deep, or dispose it off-site.
Yeah.
Okay, now, when we're trying to keep things small, and this is something that we've told you a lot of times, 3 steps. Let it grow to the desired height and width, then prune every year to take everything off beyond that limit, and then make thinning cuts. So your same little diagram that I'm going to keep forever and ever. That's your limit. Shear it or clip it individually if you want to clip it individually, but then reach in and take branches out further back in so that there's always stuff coming on the inside. So you set a limit, and these rhododendrons have gone past the limit. And so somebody's going to have to cut them back, and you're going to
see they're cutting it straight right here, and eventually they're going to have to make a decision because.
And it's tough in a botanical garden to make a decision like that because it's going to look bare for a while.
Especially with bloom coming.
Rhododendrons can grow from bare wood, but they don't grow overnight from bare wood. Junipers should not be on the walkway. This one is on its way to the walkway, and you have to say, no, you can't do that. This one, we've shown you before in other classes where it was hanging out 6 feet into the parking lot, and we cut it back. Now it's creeping out again, and we need to cut it back again.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have to do it annually. These red-twinged dogwoods could be a lot wider, but they're cut all the way to the ground and cut so that they don't hang over the walkway. So you're going to take everything off beyond the limit. Now, this is at Whistling Garden, and remember, this is a 1-person, 1-helper garden, 20 acres. There's 56 total, Steve, but 20 acres.
Yeah, 56 total, 20 cultivated.
This is for garden. This is a gazebo made of trees. There's a linden tree on each corner. And I think this would take me about 3 days to cut. And I wouldn't really be having fun doing it.
No, a lot of work.
And just looking at it is confusing. But you have to look at it and say, I see the color of the new wood versus the color of the old wood. I know where I should cut, and I'm going to cut to there. I'm not going to cut to here.
I'm going to cut.
Because then it's going to be 2 inches wider next year, and then I'll be cutting out to here. These things creep on us.
That happens a lot too, where we don't realize.
Isn't that scary looking?
Yeah.
It's really nice to be in there in the summertime, though.
Yeah.
Learn to look and recognize new wood versus old wood, and then you can tell how much something grows. This is Itea virginica, again, the sweet spire, and the red twig is new wood, and the red twigs are growing about 3 feet in a year. The older wood is got gray bark on it and is flowering more than the newer wood. And you look at those things when you do this cutting, and you take out old wood so that you're always keeping new wood coming. And when you make your thinning cuts, you're just going to take and make the plant healthier and keep it from being hollow on the inside. Because when you shear, time and time again, more and more twigs group together from one place, like the tops of those linden trees that we were showing you in the snow. And then they shade everything under them that much more, and the plant stops growing on the inside. So what you take out are things exactly like that. You reach that one that's...
And you cut right down here maybe to take out this cluster.
Yep. And that keeps them from getting hollow on the inside. So on this rhododendron, some cuts made to the top of the plant to let light get inside the plant would keep more leaves further down. And when you get this tight, this is a dwarf lilac that Steve wouldn't even believe me is a dwarf lilac. It's been sheared so many times that it's time to take it down to the ground level and let it come back. Because you have these alternatives. If you don't want to shear, if you don't want to make thinning cuts and you just want to shear something, then you're going to have to live with the fact that sooner or later, something is going to get too weak to be a good plant for you, and you'll have to replace it, which at Longwood they can do just from their nursery.
Yes.
Bring me another 8-foot plant to put in here. Or another topiary. We just floored us to hear them say, well, if that one gets too thin, I can just lift it out and put another one in. We got them sitting in the nursery in the back. So there's the replacement option is always there.
Yeah.
And as you're doing this, you have to remember about plants being able to grow from dormant buds or not. There's a group that will not push out from brown wood. It has to be leaves.
There's got to be leaf.
So the PJ facts are listed on your handout for you. False cypress is one of them, and it's bellied out over the walk. And Steve and I looked inside and said, you know, we're going to have to take off the lower branches all the way around and let the upper branches fill in, because these lower branches have no green.
They're too thin
Inside the bed itself anymore. And it's kind of good that Dawes, with all the pruning they have to do, that they spelled out Dawes Arboretum with arborvitae, dwarf arborvitae, that when it came time to it, they just replaced the whole
hedge.
It says Dawes Arboretum. We're looking at the ETUM.
Dawes is way down there. These are big plants. Those are not little plants.
No, they are 6 footers easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so I forgot what we're talking about. Oh, so things that don't grow back, the Monterey cypress, the cedrus is not going to grow back from bare wood. You got to cut to green, whether it's just a little bit of green or a bunch of green. This arborvitae that the deer stripped is not going to grow back from bare wood.
Well, you see them for years, you know,
Okay.
you realize that the more you see these arborvitaes that have been deer pruned all over the country.
Take that wood off. It's not going to sprout. So you can look at an evergreen and say, I can cut back anywhere where I can leave blue needles. And this happens to be a plant that if you looked it up on needle retention, it'll tell you that it keeps its needles for 8 to 9 years. So I can cut a long way back. The new growth is out here with no bark on it, all blue.
It's all blue with
And
a
then it's
little
got
bit
a little bit of pink and gray,
pinky, and then this is last year's.
and then gets brown.
Yep.
If you're going to take off most or all of the evergreen foliage and the interior is suddenly going to be out in the full weather, then you want 48 hours above freezing. That's ideal. If you can't get 48 hours above freezing, do the best you can. I'll take 24, I'll take anything, but don't let that plant get frozen out, because the wood takes time to adjust itself. Greg used to take care of these arborvitaes hedge for a client, and then he retired, and they said, you know, we can't find anybody who can cut them. He sent the picture to me and said, can I cut them down to 12 feet? I'm 6 feet tall. I said, yes, you can. They're hemlocks. And yes, you can cut them back to that, but you're going to need to think about how thin the bottom is and whether they can keep the shape they're in. Because the bottom is going to be the place where you can't cut in far enough to keep them in that same shape. So you have to work on the shape issue as they get out of hand like that. Okay, if the plant is going to bloom in the spring, the first time you follow the 1, 2, 3, keeping it small rules, you're probably going to lose the year's bloom. But later years, it'll be there. So here's witch hazel, and you can see the tips beyond the flowers have no flowers on them. So it takes a couple years to become a flowering wood on a witch hazel. So I want to cut some branches back so that they can grow for 2 years before they run into me again.
Mm-hmm.
And they will all have flower, and they'll all be flowering out at the edge. And it works that way. It works that way. Some plants, I don't even know why people want to grow quince. I love the color. There's no color like quince when it blooms, but it's a suckering shrub that has to be mowed around to keep it under control.
And it has thorns.
Yeah. But if you look, they've cut back to the flower buds. So they've tipped, you can see the tips cut all over there, because it's not going to bloom. It's
on any of these.
That's the size they want it to be. And so they keep cutting it right at that size, and they keep getting new growth coming from underneath, and it will bloom.
And the bloom stays basically right in this area.
Yep.
It's not up above.
Same thing with a pussy willow. If you want a pussy willow to stay this size, then start cutting it now and thinning it so that there's always new wood coming. 9 bark, there are some plants that are just a pistol to work with. 9 bark is one of them. So that's 1 year's growth, those reddish purpley twigs you see sticking up. And I have been in enough gardens, that's why we're showing you what they do in botanical gardens. It's not just Janet. I've been in enough gardens to understand that gardeners have given up on 9 bark. You can't keep it small and neat and tidy. You just cut it back and let it grow nice new foliage. And you
even the supposed dwarf ones.
Yeah. And you lose a lot of the flower that way. But they're just cutting and letting it sprout back out. Now, if I just trimmed the top and let those branches age, which is what we do at your house, Julie, trim the top now in the summertime on those branches and let them stay there and take out the older ones. You can keep a rotation going with some bloom on it too, but it's a trial. Look at these creatures. Aren't they beautiful? This is wisteria. We call them Ents, Steve and I.
Aren't they cool?
Aren't they cool? And you've probably seen wisteria growing 70 feet up a tree and down a fence and whatever, but look at these, they've been cut.
And they've been there for a number of years.
They're cut in March and they're cut in July and they're cut whenever they grab some poor unsuspecting soul walking by.
Yep, and they bloom.
And they bloom. They bloom from the spurs, the little clustered places at the base.
Right.
So right there is, yeah.
Hard to see it.
And they bloom without leaves hiding their flowers, which makes them even prettier. It's easier to see here where they've pruned the wisteria up the side of the arbor, but not at the top yet. See, that stuff is not going to bloom.
None of
It's just going to be leaves that are in the way. So they cut it out of the picture. Same thing with espaliers. It's only right at the trunk, the little spurs, the little claw branches that are going to bloom and bear fruit. So you cut back to those this time of year and they'll bloom next year. When you do prune for getting vigorous growth, do yourself a favor and cut all the way down to the ground.
Try to cut more off of these. Don't let that stay up. It makes it tighter for the new growth to come through.
Yeah, and it makes it harder for you year by year by year
to get in there and cut.
It's really terrible after a while. And when you cut back something hard, pull the ground cover back. This Calicarpa beautyberry that we mentioned before, we cut all the way back. The ground cover hasn't reached it yet, but there's ground cover.
But it's
over
going
there.
to.
And when the ground cover is there, if I cut that all the way back and that ground cover laps over the top, it'll shade it out and it'll come back.
We'll probably keep the ground cover about that far away.
So you cut
about
back
a foot and a half at least.
So you cut back the shrub and you pull back the ground cover so that it can get started again. And speaking of ground covers, this Hypericum or St. John's wort is a ground cover St. John's wort that generally doesn't bloom very well for us in zone 5-6 because it dies back. Like blue and pink hydrangeas, they die back.
Yeah.
Look at the tips here. This one, see the buds right in the tip? This is going to bloom. Even though the branches, the leaves died back, this is going to bloom because the tip bud is the one that's old enough to bloom this year. Same thing with the hydrangeas. If you can keep the tip buds alive, not eaten by deer, not killed by the cold, not killed by the frost, then they can bloom for you. Okay.
I just wanted to break in quickly that we are at, we're at time.
Okay, so I think you can probably follow this pretty easily. If you're trying to make a plant look better, the easiest way to do it is to follow these steps. Take out what's dead and diseased first. Take out the suckers and the water sprouts next. Take out the crossing wood. That means wood that goes into another branch's
area,
legal territory.
One of these two has got to go.
Yeah.
One of these.
Yeah, let them each have their own piece of the sky. And you got to walk around to look for crossing branches. So this is a witch hazel. You see the crossing branches? They're not doing each other any good. They're not producing leaves in an open space. So once you've done that, once you take out what's dead and diseased, take out the trunk suckers and the water sprouts and the crossing wood, then you can step back and look at it and go, okay, now I'm going to make it look nice.
Do this.
I'm telling you, it is the best thing you can do for yourself. And always notice how the plant responds.
Yeah.
Always look to see how it grew and what it did last time. Nice straight growth from a spirea that you cut back.
Yeah.
It came back from way down low, so you don't have to be worried about cutting that stubble out. Cut it in the middle of the year and it grew straight trunks that didn't bloom because you cut it too late.
Mhm.
It bloomed underneath. Aurelia that they're playing with at Longwood. See, they've cut it and they're watching to see, let me see, what's it gonna do? I mean, literally they are, these are suckers left over from a
Yep.
tree that used to be there. And they're cutting and seeing what it's gonna do.
See if it's gonna survive.
It's
Do
suckering.
they
it's-
like it?
Will it still bloom if I cut it here? Roses, if you want to cut roses, cut them hard, cut them back. to what's
Nice
gonna
little
bloom.
arbor.
Yep. With everything cut back, just like on the wisteria and on the fruit trees to little spurs.
You know, it doesn't take long to do one little arbor, but how about 30 or 40?
Yeah, they just keep going and going and going and going, all those roses. Pretty plants. You cut your clethra all the way back to the ground and you look at it now and go, wow, you bloomed. I see seed pods all over you. Pay attention. You know, if you see that, you go, okay, I guess I can cut clethra back. The linden trees cut back.
Yeah, they probably won't cut them this year, if you know.
You don't have to
Look
cut them
up
every
those
single
old-
year.
Yeah. Not quite long enough yet, but
They're
that's.
pretty plants. And I didn't notice he was using golden lindens in his
Mhm.
whistling garden. There they are. Okay, so that's what we got for you today. We're hoping that you can take that out into your yard sometime this week. It's going to be a good day for pruning. And see the structure, find the deadwood, keep
Clear
those
out
things
the
smaller.
crossing wood.
Yeah. And enjoy yourself. We are back next week, open to everybody. Bring your questions. You can send pictures ahead of time, and we will then have pictures to talk about another 9 bark. More spirea with nice straight branches. Spirea with straight branches that each bloomed.
Very stiff.
Looking at what, and that I went, well, look, they cut back the wisteria and the spirea and it didn't bloom. I went, no, they cut it, they deadheaded it after it bloomed. It was over by the Japanese garden and they were keeping it neat. So if you send us pictures, if you'd like to, if you have a question that has pictures that go with it, send us the pictures and we'll be able to look at the pictures and talk about things next week, because we don't have a set topic for these next 3 weeks. These are called In Our Garden, What's Going On Right Now weeks.
Yep.
Thank you for being with us. I hope you'll come back again, and I hope that your trees stand tall and firm in this snow that we've got.
Thank you very much. You all have a very good day.
And I do need to break in very quickly to say some people are having a problem figuring out how to, some people are not able to save the chat. The 3-dot menu isn't pulling up the save chat. If that's the case, just email Janet and Stephen and they can send you
Yes.
the file.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
tried to just drop it in here, but unfortunately I can't attach a file here. But yeah. And sorry to those of you who we didn't get questions answered, but
I
I'm sending my
will-
notes to Janet and Steve and
Yep. We always get Sonia's notes. We always read through them, and sometimes we save the question for the next time, and sometimes we just zip out an email.
And
send it
being,
back.
like we said, in our gardens, some of these questions may carry over nicely to next week anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
We try to get to all of them.
Yes, we do. All right.
oh, and actually this is another good promo. Jean wants to know, how can I share to someone who has not yet enjoyed these webinars? Can we do a really quick subscriber pitch?
You can, if you have someone that would like to subscribe, they can subscribe at your renewal rate, which is $225 for the year. But
If
they
you-
can,
Yeah, if you're
they
an
can-
older member.
right.
got it.
but you could also have them just step in for one, because they can sign up for an individual one just by sending us an email and saying, I'd like to sign up for one. You can tell them what the topics are coming up, and maybe they pick something and decide whether they want to be there or not. We only have year-long subscriptions. So once you're in for the year, you're in until that next April. You are, as a subscriber, you have access to all of the webinars that are in the library, not just this year's, but all the years that we have.
Yeah.
When you decide to not subscribe anymore, you'd still take with you access to those.
You still have
the
those,
same
the
library
ones
that
that
you
you
have.
had.
And we really appreciate the help. We're just today paying for the website security for the year.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, it's always running around doing Peter to pay Paul around here. So thank you very much for supporting us. Thanks, Sonia.
Take
Yeah.
care, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Good luck with the snow.